Hello everybody, Mikey here, or Burns Post, like I always say, and we are back with Bendy and the Dark Revival. We're here today because the game has been updated with the archives. So today I'm going to go over every character in the archive and every secret in the archives that I found so far. Oh. The Archives. Welcome to the Archives. The Bendy and the Dark Revival is filled with numerous characters that each had a critical role to play in the progression of the game. Here in the Archives, you will learn a little bit more about them in an up close and personal way. Feel free to explore. Before we go too deep into this, I want to apologize if I stutter over my words. It's hard for me to kind of read out loud. I don't know why, I just never really been that good at it. So, apologies in advance. Bendy, the iconic imp, was redesigned for the Dark Revival to stand out a bit from his traditional cartoon appearance. By giving him a suit of clothes, he passed some minor challenges, specifically creating a face that sported the classic Bendy eerie smile, but still managed to be heartwarming in the right conditions. He's a fan favorite, so his design had to be just right. During production, we originally envisioned Bendy to talk with a series of cute squeaks, to contrast the dark, low voice of the Ink Demon. But this turned out to be a very distracting, and the idea was scrapped pretty early on. Wilson, cartoon. Wilson was a difficult character to balance. At first, the players were purposely led to believe that he is a one-note character, obviously with an evil, over-the-top villain personality, but as the story progressed, we see the other sides of the character, and the player becomes muddled with who the man really is. In one draft, Wilson was written as a servant of Nathan Arts Jr., a separate character at the time. But the story made for more sense when the two characters became one, eliminating a lot of needless narrative complexity. Audrey, cartoon. Audrey is a kind-hearted rogue with courage and determination, some flaws, and a deep, dark past. To make our story work, we needed a newcomer to the studio world, and Audrey was the perfect fresh eyes to help the studio experience event to, so was the perfect fresh eyes to help the experience of the adventure. From day one of production, we knew if people didn't connect with Audrey by the end of the game itself wouldn't be successful. Fortunately, she turned into the quite memorable indeed. She turned out to be quite memorable indeed, and stands out from the other members of the cast. The Ink Demon. As the world of Dark Revival became more complex and established, we realized the Ink Demon's design needed a complete rethink with our new tone. Previous versions of his appearance looked absolutely silly when placed in the world alongside the other characters. No amount of creepy music or screen effects would conceal how out of place he looked. The Ink Demon needed to look different than everything else in the world, and to show a natural progression of the Ink Demon's evolution as Wilson held the cycle in place. Beast Bendy. Returning for the climax of Dark Revival, Beast Bendy also was revisited as the mindset of making him far more powerful and beast-like. Traditionally, most horror games tend to build to the point where the main villain becomes as a final form monster as a final boss. It's practically a trope. Our idea, what if you got to play as that final form instead? Also, a quick side note, you can also see the end here too. I don't know if you can read anything about it, but yeah. Joey Drew, memory. The man, the legend, the memory. Creating this version of Joey Drew was both exciting and a daunting process. It was clear from the start that this Joey would be different from the one from the original Bending the Ink Machine game. This was a man with all the guilt from a past life, but without the experience to fully understand it. The real Joey Drew made many mistakes, but ultimately learned from them. This doesn't absolve him from his sins, but at the end of his life he was able to help correct some of them, and help fight the darkness he created. Good old Betty. A faithful maid, among other things, to Wilson, Betty was an important character to the story of Dark Revival as a failed experiment and someone relatively new to the cartoon studio. She is able to give someone of a different point of view on the state of this world. We purposely left it unclear if Betty was in on Wilson's plot to harvest Audrey, or if she was just a bystander. Behind the mask, there are still answers to be found. I think that's very interesting. That means there could be more secrets in the game that we haven't found yet. Nathan Arch Sr. Nathan Arch was everything Joey Drew wasn't. He worked hard, built up from nothing, and never compromised his integrity. Joey had big dreams, but Nathan accomplished his own dreams. He and his wife Tessa raised a son as much love and care as they could, despite Nathan's career pressures. Sadly, his son did not get to share Nathan's natural talent for business and enterprise. Audrey's donut. No, you can't have it. Audrey. Audrey, the unknowing daughter of an animation pioneer. Audrey has blocked out the memory of her past after losing her father. But this role in her life was not over. A talented animator and artist, her skills landed her a job at Archgate. Was it fate that led her to reunite with Joey's machine? Or the machine of her birth? Or was it planned? Wilson. Haunted by the impossible shadow of Nathan Arch, Wilson sought to achieve something that would make his father proud. By luck, he stumbled upon the ink machine and was able to become the cartoon's world new master. Holding the cycle in place, he continued his experiments that could not fully be realized until the ink demon was purged. However, unnaturally entering to and from the ink realm has taken a toll on Wilson's physical being, slowly robbing him of his health. So this is interesting. One, that's why Wilson looks all fucked up and looks older than his dad. Two, this kind of makes Audrey's story a little more creepy. What if she was all set up to kind of, deal with the ink world? It's interesting. Maybe we'll see more in the next game, if there is a next game. The Ink Machine, designed by Thomas Connor of the Jet Corporation, stolen by Joey Drew, retrieved by Archgate, and once again reclaimed by Jen. The Ink Machine's next adventure is a mystery. So I think if there is another game, it will probably take place with the Jet Corporation. And since the Ink world is kind of like unreal, that means Thomas Connor, the real guy, is still out there. So I wonder if we'll play as him in the next one. The Keepers, Wilson's deadly guards and scientists. They aren't perfect, but the Keepers The Keepers, Wilson's deadly guards and scientists. They aren't perfect, but the Keepers will get the job done, no matter the cost. They are responsible for pressing the ink demon inside a smaller form, keeping his power sealed away, until Audrey came along and unknowingly changed the situation. The Keepers are visually designed to reflect the dangers and evils of the ink machine itself. Faceless beings made of gears and wires with no sense of morality, ordered around like a cattle. A creation living without purpose. The Butcher Gang. Barley, Charlie, and Edgar, the three original members of the Butcher Gang, were formed from the ink machine, deconstructed by Alice Angel for body parts, and bond together to stay alive and sneak attacks on their prey. In the Dark Revival, we meet an artificial fourth member of the Butcher Gang, Carly, the Ghost Girl. Although when you begin to examine her closely, Carly appears to be only a shell, with perhaps someone inside. So that is interesting to me, and while I talk about this, I'll scan the other Butcher Gang members. That's interesting to me because that makes me think that the other ones aren't possessed, but maybe Carly is. Also, I think it would really been funny if there was like an Easter egg, like if you messed with her, you could get jump scared by her again. I think that would have been funny. And the Fisher. Personally, Carly's my new favorite Butcher Gang member, but before it was Edgar. Porter. As the cycle was held in place and then with the influence of the Ink Demon held at bay, the cartoon world was able to grow and advance, creating such characters as Porter. A lost one who claimed a new identity as an explorer. Porter was written with the knowledge that the Dark Revival would be a feature more serious tone than the first game of Bendy and the Ink Machine, and his light-hearted innocence would help the player feel some warmth in this inky world of sorrow. I like that. Heidi. It is believed that Heidi spent some time in the pit, a prison set up by Wilson and the Keepers. It's unclear why, but she most likely was able to access places she shouldn't have. The experience in the pit changed her as it does many, reverting to her into a childlike state, longing for happiness again. That's interesting to think, and I don't know if that helps the Audrey Heidi theory or it doesn't, but it's interesting to think about. Sammy Lawrence, the Toilet King. The famous music composer of the studio, Sammy Lawrence originally had a slight larger role in the story The Dark Revival. But a story already filled with so many characters, making them all play a meaningful part became a challenge. He was ultimately sidelined for favor of telling a more coherent storyline. Although it was interesting to note that Sammy Lawrence appears to master the flow ability in Bendy and the Ink Machine long before Porter and Audrey could wield it. That is interesting for a lot of things. One, that he had a larger role, just got cut, but he also has the flow ability. I mean, it's sad that we see him go, but I don't know exactly where you could fit him in. Maybe, like in one of the chapters, it'd be like an Alice Angel thing where like you got kidnapped by him instead of, Alice Angel, self-appointed queen of the studio. Alice Angel is one of the most memorable faces in the Bendy world. Forever lost in the tide of insanity, she is an absolute delight to write for as a character, and an angel has many layers that time will only tell if this angry temptress will ever appear. We never really got to hear the nickname Queen of the Studio in the games, but it's interesting to hear that. Lord Amok. Ruler of the sewer cult, Lord Amok illustrates how the world of the Ink has continued to develop into different societies. Deep within the darkest places, though he was weak in a fight, his name will simply never die. King Widow. Ugh. Ink widows have begun to infest where the light grows darkest. Their king, the biggest and the most feared, will only emerge from his nest when his young are threatened. Alright, still creepy. Speaking of creepy. Ship Ahoy Dudley. The demented invention of Wilson, created to serve a dual purpose of dethroning the Ink Demon in the cartoon world, also upstaging Joey Drew in the eyes of Wilson's father, Nation Arch. Neither of these things happened. Ship Ahoy Dudley is a mysterious sailor with his own eerie grin, similar to that of Bendy, along with his sidekick, Crackle the Crab. It is unknown what kind of cartoon adventures they would have had together. And then there's the drawing of it. Lurker. The Lurker, or Steve as he became to be known, was originally created as a brute-type enemy that would free roam the way Lost Ones do, but ultimately felt unnecessary as the random Ink Demon encounters already fulfilled the role of putting the player on edge while exploring previous traverse locations. In the end, the Lurker found a much better calling as an unlikely ally, effectively expanding him into more than just a typical enemy. I think I like that more than if he was an enemy. It's more interesting as an idea. The Cycle Breakers. Henry Stein, the original Cycle Breaker. Henry Stein is the ghost of a man who lost his purpose years ago. Once fueled with finding a way to escape the torturous of the Ink Demon and finding his way home to his wife, Henry is now left with the cold reality of being a recreation of the person he thought he was. Saved as a special surprise for the fans of Bendy and the Ink Machine game. Henry was strictly omitted from all the public discussion of the character during the entire production, which spanned several years, but Henry returned with a very satisfying face reveal. Come on, crack a little smile, Henry. Crack a little smile. You can't see the back of his model either. It's hard to see a lot of the backs, unfortunately. Allison returning for another victory over the Ink Demon. Allison is always the voice of reason. A beacon of hope, Allison's design was carefully upgraded from the previous Bendy and the Ink Machine game to maintain her personality, with more fidelity. The purpose of meeting Allison so early in the campaign was to introduce the player to a familiar face after the main introduction. At the start, Allison was able to serve as the motivating force for Audrey until the true plot kicked in later. Tom. Tom is Allison's silent protector, and the only Boris clone involved in the main story. Where is Boris the Wolf? Rumor has it that during the events of the game, Boris is experiencing a dark survival story of his own. Which paints an interesting picture of this particular cycle, because that means it's taking place before Chapter 3, because Boris and the Dark Revival also took place before Chapter 3. It's interesting to think about. But yeah, guys, that's all I really have for here. There's actually one more thing to show off, and I think you guys will love it. You go over here to this trash can, you open the lid, Harold. Too much dry air, not enough fish food. I thought that was funny. But yeah, guys, this is the archives. Honestly, I really like them. Although if there's one thing I would say to add, a couple more secrets in here. Like Bertram's head would be pretty cool to look at, and maybe Norman's head too, or an ink heart, something like that. You know, just a little reference to the projectionist and Norman and stuff. Although I can't show this off because I'm on Xbox, but there is a wandering sin or Cinny out about in this area somewhere. But unfortunately, I can't get to that because I'm on Xbox. Alright, guys, that's all for today. I hope you all enjoyed it, and leave down below what you guys would want to see added to the archives if they ever do change anything. Alright, guys, that's all for today. Stay safe out there, and may the stars shine down upon you. Bye!